and welcome to Saffic, because a girl kissed a girl and you wrote about it. Hello, 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 and thanks for choosing to join us again here at Saffic. I'm Kid.
And I'm Saint.
And today we're going to be discussing the evolution of the culture that surrounds fanfiction, and we're going to pay special attention to how the process of submitting a story has fundamentally changed, and how that has led to a very different standard of story and level of reader engagement.
And if that sounded super scripted, that's because it totally was. We're trying really, really hard today to not be crotchety old ladies on our porches. You dang millennials with your dreary and your fanfic.nets. If we haven't already come across as the bitter remnants of a different time when Xenofix reigned supreme, we will definitely 100% step over that line today. But it's not all bad, is it?
It's not all bad.
There are things that we miss, but with some conscious effort on everyone's parts, we can create a better environment together. An environment that is more pleasant for readers, and happy readers lift up writers, which causes better fan fiction. And I think that it's safe to say that that's something that we all want.
It's something certainly that we want.
Definitely, I really want that.
So a while ago, you and I were discussing something called the Harry Potter effect, and it led to a very long, lengthy conversation that eventually resulted in us deciding to do a podcast. So essentially today we are going to be talking about the Harry Potter effect. Could you go ahead and give us a little bit of something on that?
Sure. The Harry Potter effect is what I call the point in which fandom kind of took a turn from something that was more mature and adult, Star Trek and even Xena were a very kind of adult-oriented...
older audiences.
Yeah, older audiences. Switching over to teenagers and children. Kids and teenagers being thrown into fandom, they're on the internet, they're making friends, they're talking about fandom, they're talking about this thing that they love so much, and they're writing fanfic.
And around this same time, there was a shift. There was a shift from the old archive sites to, the new type fanfiction.net format. And this was actually a very important shift in a number of different ways.
It completely changed the culture of fanfiction.
Completely. Absolutely. I mean, the very way in which stories were posted. For example, on the older archiving sites, you actually had to submit your story, and it had to be approved by at least one person before it was up for archiving on a specific site. And then you contrast that with fanfiction.net, where you can post anything.
And it also changed the way that readers communicated with writers.
For sure.
Back then, old archive style sites, it was email. You would be touched by something and you would email the author.
Right, writers would actually leave their personal email address, in the beginning notes of their story and, ask people, hey, if you like this, come to me, we can discuss it, we'll talk about it, we'll share our love. Yeah,
and back then message boards were also a big thing, which I think was the height of reader engagement, were message boards. You would leave a message, and then every chapter the author would come back and, write down the names of everybody who commented and personally speak back to them. We don't do that anymore.
Absolutely. That's certainly something that has changed. On top of that, I've found, as I go back through the older archiving sites and I look at the comments that are actually posted on stories, whenever there's a place for them to be posted, these comments tend to critique the story in a constructive way, paying special attention to characters and plot and devices that were used within the story. Nowadays, a lot of the comments that I come across on AO3 or fanfiction.net are more geared towards simply saying, this is great, I love it, continue, can't wait to see what happens, which is it's still great to hear back from people who are reading your story. It's just that because of the format of archive sites versus something like fanfiction.net, that is definitely one other thing that has changed.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with just sort of reader culture as it is. We sort of, we're consumers now rather than active participants. You know, and I'm guilty of this too, and I know for a fact you are as well, as we get on that internet, we read them fanfics, and when we're done, we move on to the next one. And we don't even really think twice.
Absolutely. I certainly am guilty of this. I don't really remember the last time I actually engaged a writer. And so maybe this is something speaking to us as well. I do
it when I find a fanfic that I really get into. I'll do it. But
do you?
I try.
I respect the hell out of that.
I try to. I'm not always successful, but I certainly try. I like to be on the other end of that. I think all writers really like good reader engagement. There's something different about getting the, hey man, that's a really sweet story. Super can't wait for more. Yeah. There's something like that is good and satisfying.
It feels nice, yes.
It feels nice, but when somebody is truly deeply invested in the story, there's something really magical. I've had that once in all of my time posting current fanfiction that is like Orphan Black level fanfiction, like modern, what I'm writing now. I've only ever had that on one story, and it truly brings something different and unique, and it makes writers more passionate about their work, and that's why I think it's so important that we get back to that.
Another difference that came along around the same time as the shift from a more adult audience to a more young, hip crowd was that fanfiction itself fundamentally changed in the content. It went from writers who were interested in writing as a craft, usually, coming up with new plots and ideas for established characters, to younger kids writing fanfiction in a more wish fulfillment type fashion, meaning that they were saying, wouldn't it be cool if Harry, I don't know, made out with Draco and got caught by Snape?
Right.
And then it became more about them wanting to see certain things happening and having it fulfilled vicariously through writing.
Correct.
That was probably a poor example.
No, I think that was a great example. I think there's something, and I haven't 100% put my finger on whether it was the way that stories were told then as opposed to the way that stories are told now. But it feels like shows, I always bring up Star Trek and Xena because those are the two big ones that I can think of when I think about old-timey fan fiction, is that those stories were established and set in realms that was very episodic, right? Like every episode we were doing something new that was a contained story.
Oh, right, yes.
So there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. There was a conflict and a conflict resolution. There were these overarching storylines, right? But less so than there is now. I feel like now a season is a story in itself. Back then, an episode was a story in itself. And so it was very good and very easy for fanfiction writers to continue on that. The drive was, I'm going to have Xena and Gabby go on an adventure. And they would write an adventure, and it could be 3 chapters or it could be a novel-length thing. But there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it was an adventure that they went on. The same thing with Star Trek fanfiction was okay, today Kirk and Spock are going to go to this planet and this thing's going to happen. It was an episodic thing. So we went from that kind of using the characters to tell new stories, and into the wish fulfillment, which is, we're still at the wish fulfillment phase. I'm not sure where it's going to go from here or if it will ever change. But it definitely went from what are Xena and Gabby gonna do today to how many different positions can Drary get in.
I think that wish fulfillment can definitely range from wish fulfillment that I think probably every fanfiction writer has done throughout the history of time, where you want these characters to do a certain thing, so you write it, right? And it can range from that up to actually inserting yourself into your own fanfiction and having, I don't know, Draco, like, bend you over a table
Right. The Mary Sue, which is something that I think has been beaten out of fanfic writers, but you still see it every now and then. How does this all tie in to lesbian fanfiction, you might ask?
Well, whenever you're watching a television show and you see two characters on screen that you just think would go together so good, so you write about it. And here we have the birth of non-canon pairings. I mean, there are like many examples of this across all ranges of fandoms. I mean, with the 100, you got Raven and Octavia.
Gotta love that.
That's totally a thing.
Yeah.
And then I guess with Game of Thrones, they, Marjorie and Sansa.
Yeah, I think, was her name Sophie Turner, the actress? She is driving that ship. Captain of the Marjorie and Sansa boat.
Is she really?
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you had an opportunity to kiss Natalie Dormer, wouldn't you be driving that boat?
I'd be the captain, for sure.
For sure. Inara and Kaylee?
Oh, yeah, that was pretty big.
I shipped it.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really, but I totally saw how that would be something people would totally want to happen.
Yeah. Too much hairbrushing for people not to think about.
Dude, that hairbrushing was so erotic.
Constantly brushing people's hair.
Right. And you know, I mean, and a huge thing for us being within the Orphan Black fandom, definitely there's so many clone pairings, it's not even funny.
Oh my gosh. Bless my soccer cop heart. Huge soccer cop fan. I am. You are now. It's taken a lot of convincing.
You whittled me down.
It wasn't until she read Smells Like Teen Spirit.
You know what? That is the fic that just like, the light clicked on.
I'm so glad you read that.
Right. So, I mean, you have Soccer Cop, and then you have Pro Punk.
Yeah.
The angry Pro Punk.
Oh god, it's so good. There's nothing, like, who would have ever thought that I would want girls to just punch each other and then do it?
I mean, I would think that you would want that, but...
I didn't know until it happened.
Right.
What about non-clone pairings?
So, of course, French Leather.
Yeah, Sarah Delphine. The whole, what was it, season 3, episode 1, spawned that entire, like, one scene where Sarah, like, pulls off her wig, and then Delphine is standing there, and you're like, oh, I didn't know this was a thing until now.
Right.
It was so serious.
Right, for sure. I mean, and if we're gonna go back, like, further than this is not a new phenomenon.
No.
It's been going on since the beginning of everything. I mean, talking specifically about FemSlash, technically, in a strict sense, back in the day as it was airing, Xena and Gabriella were a wish fulfillment non-canon pairing.
Right. Until, like, I would say in the last season, they came right out and said it, right? The episode where Michael Hurst was the guy, and they took the love from Aphrodite and had to give it back to her. And then at the end, he's like, are you guys lovers? And then they were like, do you really want to know? And he was like, yeah. And then the camera battery dies. They came right out and said it. And fuck, Xena got Gabby Sappho tickets for her birthday. Like, that's the gayest thing I've ever heard in my life.
It's absolutely the gayest shit ever.
Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, it was very wish fulfillment back then.
Yeah, and then it just in your face. However, but about pairings that never happened and were never a thing, you have the big 7 of 9 and Janeway.
7 of 9 and Janeway.
Yeah, you got the 7 of 9 and Janeway. And then for Stargate, you have Sam and Janet, which I am a person, like, I love them.
Were you a big shipper?
That is, like, one of my biggest ships.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
I knew you were, like, a Stargate nerd, but...
Definitely. I think I've read almost every single Sam and Janet story that there is to be.
Is there a lot?
There's a surprising amount, yeah.
Yeah. It's not just, the ladies either. The dudes have this too. We don't talk about dude on dude, though we could. I mean, well, we'll have to talk about it a little today because it's got a lot to do with queer baiting, and that's something that I want to talk about today. But Spock and Kirk, that's a wish fulfillment pairing. Destiel and John Locke, those are fics I'm sorry, those are pairings that are specifically leading us into queer baiting. And that's, when, you know what queer baiting is, when the writers of the show notice, hey, the ladies sure like it when these two talk to each other. Then they do the thing where they make them talk to each other a lot of innuendo.
And that happens a lot, specifically in Sherlock.
Oh man, it's so bad.
For sure.
It's bad. Supernatural's the same way, Dustio. A little bit, and I don't want to say that we were sensing it, but it seemed like Person of Interest was there for a little while with Root and Shaw, but I believe, don't quote me on this, I think with my own eyes I saw a gift set of them in bed together, but I could be making that up. That could have been a dream I had.
So that's like a Xena type situation where it moved from the realm of lesbians fucking all up in it to it actually happening on screen, maybe, right?
Yeah. I don't know how intentional it was, if they had intended it to just be a flirtatious thing or what, but it's certainly, the fans took it and ran with it, didn't they?
Writers of shows do not write in a vacuum. They know what's going on the interwebs, especially when there is a tidal wave of something big happening within the community. And sometimes, this turns out that they notice that the ladies are loving it super hard, and writing a lot of stories about two specific characters. And so they can really play upon that. And that's really what we're talking about, how writers notice that the fans love a certain pairing, so they play it up. And they may play it up in the sense to where they're kind of, hinting around and kind of joking about it, but it's never actually a thing. They're doing it to get viewers, essentially. But this is just one example of how writing fanfiction is important. At its core, what we're talking about here is wish fulfillment. People were writing stories about two characters who were non-canon, which spurred the queer baiting. But at its very core, it's wish fulfillment, and that's what we're seeing a lot in fandoms nowadays.
And that's something that's really vital. I think that it seems like we're talking about wish fulfillment being a bad thing, but we're super not. Wish fulfillment is something that's really a vital part of the fanfiction community. It's important that fanfiction is accessible. It's important that it's easy to read and easy to write. But unfortunately, with that comes the downside of anybody can do it, so you're gonna have a lot of bad stuff.
Right. So because anyone can do it, and no one really has to have an editor, back whenever you had to submit your story for archival, everyone around you was submitting work of a similar caliber in a sense of, plot, structure, story, and character development, grammar, things like that. So you kind of had to play on a certain level to even be noticed. And now it just kind of seems like you can keyboard smash and post, right. And people will read and love your fics because you are giving them something that they want, which is interaction between two characters. And on either end of the spectrum, they're both fundamentally good things. We are not bashing it. It's just, there is something to be said about the shift that occurred.
Yeah. But it's hard to say that this is a negative thing, because it is so important that people are willing and able to get their stuff out there. Anybody can write fan fiction, and that is a beautiful thing. But it's also kind of an ugly thing. Right? Because everybody has read the really bad fan fiction, right? There is always a fan fiction that you're like, how does this even exist? And that's kind of mean to say, I guess, but everybody can do it. It's important to maintain that, but at the same time, like, how do you, when did it become quantity over quality?
I guess that is definitely what we're getting at here. We want to kind of maybe help in some little tiny way bring back a little bit of quality over the quantity that is, like, posted every day.
Yeah. There's something about being able to write something and then put it on the internet and have people read it. Ko-Fi is the kind of pairing where people are so desperate for more that you can write complete garbage and they will eat it up.
I mean, I have read complete Ko-Fi garbage and fucking loved it because
I have
Ko-Fi.
written complete Ko-Fi garbage and got praised for it. Like, Riptide was the worst thing I've ever written in my life, and like people wanted me to spoon feed it to them. It was terrible. And that it feeds on it's a bad cycle. It's the immediacy of the internet, right? You want to do something, so you write it, you put it out there, and people are like, that's great, thanks so much, you did a really wonderful job. And you're like, yeah, I did. And then you write more. But how much of it is really, truly good quality, and how much of it is people are so interested in this pairing that they will they're into it. Just give it to me. I will put it in my face.
And it's almost like they fill in the holes of quality. It's like, because you're having these two characters interact on the the metaphorical screen, it's okay because they can ignore certain things about the story and focus in on the feelings that they have whenever these two characters interact.
For sure. You're onto something when you say it like fills in the holes. For sure. 100%.
I mean, it all comes back to the things that we can do as readers and writers every day to help kind of elevate the conversation and culture around fanfiction.
Yeah.
Certainly, like, I would love to go back to offering constructive criticism whenever you comment on a story.
It's as simple as this. Offering constructive criticism in the comments will elevate everyone. If you could just do one thing that would really boost fanfiction right now would be offering constructive criticism in the comments.
Mm-hmm. And engaging in the story and where it's going and making some sort of insight as to the characters or the plot, or really just like kind of, even if you just praise a device or a figure of speech that a writer used, then they'll be encouraged to write more like that, as opposed to just,
There's one writer in the Orphan Black fandom right now, and I won't say her name, though. Maybe I should, Should I?
Do it!
There's one writer in the Orphan Black fandom there are a lot of writers in the Orphan Black fandom that I follow, but Sharko is someone that when I read her fics, there's something, like, her writing speaks to me on a level that I think it speaks to a lot of people, but that's just her style of writing, her cadence of writing. And something that I like to do when I read her fanfictions is I like to take out a piece of paper or open up a Word document and read it, and every time something, like one line hits me really hard, I will write that shit down and then comment later and be like, hey, listen, this line did this to me, this line did this. Pointing out, even if it's just pointing out like a line that hit you particularly hard, there's something more direct and more personable than, hey man, this was a really good story. Not that that's not an encouraging comment to read, because it is, but people who go the extra mile and say things about the fanfiction that they really enjoyed, those are always comments that I like to read, and those are comments that I try and give.
Right, and those are the kinds of readers that just make you really want to write good for.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than at the end of your fanfiction when you write, like, hey, if you don't comment, I'll stop writing. Like, you see those and you're like, I will never comment on your story, you sack of shit.
Yeah.
But it is. When you're a writer, it's hard. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I've been there, where you write something and the people just aren't, whether it's whether they not liking it, or are they just not commenting, and you start to question yourself.
I'm currently experiencing this with Slow Burn.
Really?
I just released the second chapter, and it's gotten a sufficient amount of views. Like, I think I'm close to 500, which is not bad in my opinion for the second chapter.
Right.
But I've only gotten 2 comments, and they were both totally encouraging and made me very happy. But I'm just like, why aren't more people like, it kind of just, it makes you kind of question yourself.
Yeah, it makes you, it's hard enough to write. It's hard enough to sit down and, it's easy to sit down and write garbage, but it's hard to sit down and write something that you really put yourself in, which I think is the only kind of good fan fiction, is the kind of fan fiction that has the author living inside of it. And it's hard to sit down and put yourself out there like that when you're not really sure how people feel about it. And that's why it's so important to comment. You know, you can leave the little kudos button, you know, thumbs up. That's great. And I'm glad that you like it, and I'm glad that you're engaging in it. But there's something about having somebody say, you know, this is something that I really enjoyed about this chapter, or I used to have people like speculate, like, oh my God, I wonder if this is going to happen next. And that's like super satisfying, right? And it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like, hey, this person is connecting with this thing that I did, and that makes me really interested and eager to write more.
I really love those kinds of comments. They are my favorite to receive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeping your fan fiction writers eager. It's hard to write when you don't know how people feel.
Absolutely. And so that's kind of the ways that readers can help out. But let's talk about the writers.
Don't post garbage.
If we're going to summarize it in one statement, it has to be don't post garbage.
And you know what? I'm guilty of this.
Oh, I think we have all posted garbage. I may or may not currently be posting garbage.
I think slow burn is good. There's Riptide was garbage. It was complete and utter garbage. And I posted it anyway because I knew that it was a Coffeen fanfiction and people were going to read it. I'll be completely honest with you.
Yeah, nom it up, for sure.
I knew that people were going to read it because it was a Coffeen fan. If that had been a purely soccer cop fanfiction, nobody would have read it. If it didn't have Coffeen as the main characters, nobody would have read that. It was garbage. But I wrote it anyway and I posted it, and it was because I was being selfish. It's because I wanted a pat on the head, and I got it. It's my most popular fanfiction. It's the worst fanfiction I've ever written, and it's the most popular one I've ever written.
Saint, how can people not post garbage?
People can find friends. You and me do this for each other.
We do.
Find yourself a friend who reads fanfiction, who writes fanfiction, who is a fanfiction connoisseur. Find somebody who is obsessed with fanfiction and better each other. Because
we definitely, we have Google documents and we just share each other on our Google documents and be like, hey, read it and tell me what's up.
Yeah.
And we will tear each other apart.
Yeah, we will. We'll tear each other apart. I tear you apart all the time.
You sometimes kind of hurt me, but it makes
I burn you to make you better.
But it's made me a better writer. At least in my opinion, I think that you've definitely given me something that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Everybody kind of has a specialty, I think. And if you find somebody with specialties in the areas where you are lacking, that can really help.
Absolutely. And, if you don't have someone, I think it's good to reread your own stuff. And reread it at a different time of day, in a different setting, when you're in a different mood. Yeah. It's good to look at your work from all angles. And not just, of course it's very important to edit for grammar and spelling, but try to look at it the way that a reader might look at it.
I'll be completely honest. Bad grammar and bad spelling are annoying, but I can totally look past it if it's a good fanfiction. People think like, the main reason that you need a beta reader is to correct your grammar and spelling. Yes, that is annoying. It is annoying to have constant grammatical errors and constant spelling mistakes. But the only thing that it ruins is the immersion. If it's a good fanfiction, it's a good fanfiction. And I'm not saying don't edit for that stuff. Please, for the love of God, do. But don't be like, I can't post this because I don't have anybody that can edit this for me.
More importantly, as you were saying, it's the story itself. It's your characters. Are you looking at Delphine and imagining her as one side of her character and only writing her a certain way? Or are you imagining her complexly? Because that's the kind of fan fiction I want to read. I want to read fanfiction where Cosima is not just smart and sassy and a stoner. I want to read fanfiction where she's also selfish, where she lets down the people around her and she has to deal with that and internalize. And I'm very interested in watching how these characters exist in like a three-dimensional form.
You know what I'm really interested in? I don't know if I've actually been kind of avoiding fanfiction right now, but so I don't know if anybody's done this, but I'm really interested. I really want a fic. It doesn't have to be a long one. I just want a fic where somebody mirrors Delphine and Rachel because they are the same fucking person.
They have amazing similarities.
Rachel has just given up. That's the only difference. Rachel has completely solidified herself.
She's burned, yeah.
Yeah, whereas Delphine still had something to fight for.
Oh man, wow, yeah.
Yeah, I really need something. I need someone to do that.
And these are the kinds of things. These are definitely the points that I look for. And I think that if we all, as writers, paid a little bit more attention to imagining our characters a little bit more complexly, whenever you're writing your characters, they're each coming at each other from different angles. And I think that by paying attention to those angles and how that these people would actually interact with each other in that space, that is so important.
The angles are so important.
Because everyone, and any interaction with another human being comes at it from a certain angle.
Everyone is a hero in their own mind.
Oh, absolutely.
I think, like, right now Orphan Black is in such a good place for that, for fanfiction.
Oh, yeah.
You are seeing Sarah as the awful, like, Sarah's just not a great person. And she never really has been. She's got thrust into this hero's role, but she's still so childish. Her jealousy with Felix. Felix's jealousy with Sarah. That whole thing. Allison's still hung up on not having a baby when she's got two beautiful kids of her own. Like, these are awful human beings. Write about how bad they are, please.
Every single character on that show is multifaceted.
Except for Paul.
Except for Paul, and, you know, and the support characters, the support characters fine, I'll give you that. Like Scott, we haven't seen very many different sides of him.
I think we've seen more sides of Scott than we ever saw of Paul, and Paul was in the show for fucking 3.5 seasons. Like,
damn, that's terrible. But
you know more about Benjamin than you knew about Paul.
That is the damn truth. Okay. Every character on Orphan Black, except for Paul, is incredibly multifaceted. They have strengths, they have weaknesses. They have things that cause them to break, and they have reasons to live. And as writers, that's definitely something we should be paying attention to.
Talk about Cosima as being strong on the outside but crumbling on the inside. I loved, like, this last episode we had Sarah's parallel with Beth. I think that's something that is played up so much in the show, and it's not shown a lot in fanfiction. So I'd like to see more of that.
Currently with Cosima, I really do appreciate the way that Tatiana's portraying Cosima more and more this season. She has this thin veneer that you can see literally shaking the bottom of her, like her lip quiver, like the voice quiver. Cosima's definitely losing control, and it's starting to come out in these. Cosima is a lot about control. Even though she tries to make it seem like she's not so much, like she's chill and cool, but really she's in control of many things, and she's losing it, man. She's losing it. She's terrified to die.
And I like that it's interesting to think about, like, the quiver, right? You're talking about the way that her lip shakes, the way that she physically shakes. Tat plays Beth the same way, but that shake, they both have it, but it's in two completely different ways. I know this podcast is not about how amazing of an actress Tatiana Maslany is. But
now
think about it for a second. They're both, all of the clones are very, and there's a need to be in control. Even Crystal. There is such a need to be in control in Crystal that she's after them.
Oh, yeah.
Tony's refusing to give up any information until he found out the secret. That's a need for control. All of the clones have a need for control. It's really interesting. Anyway.
It really is. So Cosima, I think that, I mean, it does come back to fan fiction, because the way that we're seeing these different sides of Cosima portrayed on screen by Tatiana Maslany, you can definitely, I mean, every single time I write Cosima and Delphine, more specifically than, and more deeply than any other, like, characters or pairing. So every time either of them are on screen, I pay special attention to everything that I can. And lately, one of those things has been the sides of Cosima that we're seeing, the lip tremble, the voice shake, the ways that she's being, her and Sarah are both being self-destructive, just in different ways. Yeah. It's just amazing. Okay, way off topic, back on it, fan fiction.
Don't cut any of this out. This is super important stuff.
I'm not cutting any of it out.
Right. So. Edit and guess how much we mess up all the time. We'll get a half-hour episode out of an hour-long recording. Bring it all back together.
So, fan fiction. Basically, everything we've been talking about up to this point, this last little bit, has been how we as readers and writers can engage in the fandom. Now, one thing that I used to love was whenever a site would give out awards to certain fan fictions. I really loved that. I mean, you had the Zippy Awards, you had, if we're talking about, like, smut, you had the Swollen Butt Awards. Like, I mean, there were tons of...
Come up with a grosser name for that one.
I know, it's disgusting.
The Swollen Butt Award.
Well, I mean...
Slick Clit Award.
Slick Clit, that's beautiful. You know what? Put a freaking trademark on that one. Yeah. Coming soon to you. Anyway, there were awards that were given out, and some of them were, reader voted, which added another element of engagement to a specific fandom. And then you had other ones that were based upon, like, ratings that were given, or, a panel of people who picked out certain stories based upon entries. Like, there was a wide array of ways in which readers could nominate writers, and writers could be rewarded for doing good work. We should bring that back.
I'll tell you what, we're gonna bring that back. It's just been decided. I just fucking decided. We're gonna come up with a award, and we're gonna award it to fanfiction.
Is it called the Slick Clit Award?
It's the Slick Clit Award, and it has nothing to do with porn. It's just going to be called the Slick Clit Award, and we're going to give it to, like, any rating. Like, G-rated fanfiction, you have been awarded the Slick Clit Award.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
We'll come up with a better name than Slick Clit. We will design, like, we'll design an award, and we'll post it. I think a lot of the problem is you can't, I guess you could post, like, HTML source, image source tag, a picture into your fanfic. .net or AO3 description. But back in the day, it was it would be at the bottom of the fanfic. They would just have it down there. But now that we're at hosting sites, it's not as easy to do that. But I mean, you can just throw it into the description.
We will find a way. I love it. It's beautiful. All right, let's move on.
All right, we're going to get on with our reoccurring segments, then we're going to wrap up the episode. We're not going to do a writing tip this week.
Mostly because we feel like a good portion of this episode was a writing tip.
We're going to jump into a different reoccurring segment, and that reoccurring segment is the trope of the week. Kid, what is today's trope of the week?
Groundhog Day. And what is Groundhog Day?
It's when the day repeats over and over again until a specific condition has been met. The whole reason that this is today's trope of the week is because it also coincides with our fic recommendation. But let's talk for a little bit about Groundhog Day, the trope, not the movie.
Right. So we see Groundhog Day a lot throughout not only, like, writing, but in television shows as well. In movies and books, and it's everywhere.
Right. Xena had a Groundhog Day episode.
Right. Been there, done that. The day kept on repeating because it paralleled with a Romeo and Juliet type story. Regardless, the point of it was that the day repeated until a specific action happened that stopped it from happening, basically.
Trope of the week is going to be something where we talk about tropes that we like and reasons why we liked them. Why do we like Groundhog Day so much?
I think it's fun.
It is fun. It's fun, and it's an easy plot. For people like me who really like characters and really like character development but are super bad at plots, guess what? Groundhog Day is a great way to do this. All you have to do is come up with like why something is happening and then just work backwards from there. I'm sure I'm making it sound a lot easier than it really is. I've never actually written a Groundhog Day trope fic. So I'm sure it's like super difficult and it takes a lot of planning. But it seems like it would be an easy plot device.
I think that one of my my personal favorite things about the like repeating day fic is that you can destroy your characters
every time. You can murder everybody and then the day just starts over again. Xena like stabs Joxer.
And I definitely think that one of my favorite aspects of the repeating day thing is that you have one character who's aware that everything is happening around them, and that character can be emotionally invested, and the person that they love can just die in several different terrible ways, and it tears them apart, and then they come back the next day.
That happens in our fic recommendation, doesn't it?
It does.
Do you want to continue talking about Groundhog Day, or you want to just get into this fic recommendation, because I'm excited about it?
Let's talk about the fic recommendation.
Lead us into it, kid! What is the fic recommendation for the week?
The fic recommendation of the week is a story by J. Bear 1701. It's called 3/24/21. It is a Groundhog Day style fic, and it features my love, Kofian.
And it is by far one of the best fics in the Orphan Black fandom. If you haven't read it, you're a fool. Go read it now. We will put a link in the down belows, in the nether regions.
By far, it is one of my favorite Kofian fics, and it's because of the fact that you really see, originally you see Cosima try to figure out what the hell's going on, and then the plot unfolds itself, and I really think that everything in there remains true to what it is.
It is an AU in that, like, where they're working and what they're doing, but it feels real. I get what you mean. They're scientists still.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of science involved. It's a good fic.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. You definitely get the whole Groundhog Day experience, and you feel Cosima's frustration, and then she starts figuring it out, and, you know, ultimately in a Groundhog Day style fic, funny things happen.
Yeah, it is sort of inherently comedic.
Right, because you know the day's repeating, so you can do whatever the shit cakes you want.
Yeah.
You can tell off people you've never told off before. You can kiss a girl. You can...
Which is what I would do.
It's a great Kofian fic, because Delphine is pulled towards Cosima, and it's just, I love it so much.
The thing about Rapido fics is you can't really say anything or you're spoiling it. Like, we can't talk about the plot because, you know.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Exactly.
It is great, though. And it is classic Rapido Day. It's got a happy ending. Everything's great.
An absolutely fantastic fic, and you should check it out. There will definitely be a link in the... Nether region.
Slippery clit. Down below. Alright, so that's it. We got an hour and 25-ish minutes of recording, so you should get about half an hour out of it.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us today. Saint, what are we going to be talking about next week?
We've talked so much this week, like we went off on that tangent where we were talking about characters. So I think next week we'll talk about characters. We'll talk about, can we just specifically narrow it down? Can we just talk about Orphan Black characters?
I would love to talk specifically about Orphan Black characters.
I would love that too. I realize that this is a little it's not really what this fanfiction show is about, but it's important to get to know your characters. We are reading Orphan Black fanfiction right now, so we're going to talk about Orphan Black characters. If you feel like you need to get a little more out of your characters, listen next week. We're going to talk about it.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed the journey today, and thanks for joining us once more. We truly love just yakking at each other.
And yakking with you. Yak back at us. We're on Tumblr.
All right, that's it. Well, I'm putting a stop to this. Thanks for joining us. Have a good week. We'll yak at you later.
Bye.
Bye.